Chapter 1. Misha felt his chest tighten, like someone was squeezing his heart. Stress had that effect on him. A beanie concealed his soot-colored hair. Lines etched his rugged face. His icy eyes had deep circles underneath and a stony gaze that came from a hard life. For years, he wore an invisible mask. But, like sewage overflowing into the streets, his true self seeped into the world. He waited in his busted-up Toyota Tacoma as his 20-year-old son locked the house and dragged his feet to the truck's passenger side door. Joseph had his late mother's soft skin and deer-in-the-headlights expression. Scrawny and shy, the boy was unfit for the task to come. Despite this, they were moving toward the final steps of the plan. Under the midnight moon, they drove through Anchorage, Alaska's largest city. Winter snow melted a month ago, and frosty greenery had returned to the chilly seaside biome. The temperature fluctuated between 30 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit. It would drop below freezing at night. Smoke billowed out of the truck's tailpipe as they drove by packed bars and dimly lit churches. They cruised through a suburban neighborhood and arrived at a middle-class home. A line of vehicles parked alongside the street. "Let me do the talking," Misha said. He'd lost his Russian accent decades ago. Joseph nodded. Having exited the truck, Misha rang the doorbell. The door opened an inch, revealing a sliver of a woman's chubby face. "Neighbor?" Her tone was curt. "Let's return to our rams," Misha quoted a famous Russian saying. The homeowner directed her judgmental gaze to Joseph, and then back to Misha. "Second gen?" "Trained and ready," Misha replied, partly lying. The woman seemed skeptical. She opened the door and stepped aside. Misha entered first and his son followed closely behind. The homeowner pointed to a nearby door. Behind it, stairs descended into the carpeted basement. A dozen other men surrounded a table in the center and loomed over the detailed city map. More than 2/3 of them were Alaskan locals, muscular, but rather unassuming. The final 3 had stern faces and hardened hearts. They must have come from the homeland. "Misha," Mr. Hines from the general store said, and strongly hugged Misha. Hines pulled away from Misha but kept his hands on his upper arms. "I never expected you to be one of us." "Likewise, brother," Misha said. The clerk whom he bought his milk from was now someone he'd die for. One of the tough homelanders glared until the men's focus had returned to the table. "We'll head from Fire Station 10 to 8. Delta will move toward Main Street while Foxtrot travels this path." Homelander traced his finger up the winding road. "We will have until the sunset to complete our objective. How that goal is reached is entirely up to you." One of the locals slightly raised his hand. Homelander waited for his question. The local asked, "What happens the day after?" "We hold our posts until the flotilla arrives," Homelander said. "The next day?" the local asked. Homelander replied, "When they are ready, they will strike. Now, all of you, recap for me the plan. One mistake, and I'll have you start over." An hour went by, and not a moment was wasted. The 3 men from the homeland left, and the rest of the conspirators lingered. The female homeowner brought down beer and a cheese platter before silently retreating upstairs. Joseph pulled Misha to the side of the room, while the rest of the people chatted. Getting away from earshot of the others, Joseph whispered, "I don't think I can do this." Misha grabbed the boy's mouth and painfully squeezed, his calloused fingers burrowing into the boy's hairless face. Eyes wide and full of fury, Misha warned, "Don't you say that." Terrified, Joseph acknowledged him. Misha removed his hand and wiped his palm on his pant leg. He glanced back at the crowd. None of them noticed. Joseph lowered his head. Misha lifted his chin using the side of his hooked index finger. You understand your role." "Yes, Father," Joseph said submissively. "One sign of weakness, and they will shoot you. I will shoot you," Misha said, his tone cold and quiet. "I will not fail you," Joseph said strongly. Misha patted the side of Joseph's face. "Good. Come." He walked to the others. Joseph brushed away a tear and followed, proud to have some recognition from his father. A large stack of duffel bags were propped against the wall. Mr. Hines removed the top bag and unzipped it. Inside, gun parts individually wrapped in plastic were marked in order of assembly. "Each bag contains 2 firearms and—" He reached into the bag and pulled out a manual. "One of these." He leafed through the pages. "This will teach you how to assemble and disassemble your weapon. Seeing that we don't know whether the attack will be tomorrow or in another 30 years, you need to know your weapon. Goes without saying, but keep this away from the police or public eye. There's plenty of land, not many miles out of the city, that's perfect for practicing shooting. You'll be provided with 2 cases of ammo that weigh a metric ton. Don't waste it all before the big day." There were a few light chuckles in the crowd. Mr. Hines dropped the pamphlet back in the bag and zipped it up. "Who wants the first one? Don't be shy." Chapter 2. Eva Bekhor was up before sunrise and in the passive solar greenhouse before the rooster crowed. Her work boots thumped as she descended the plywood stairs. Water sloshed in her tin watering can. This early, no sunlight spilled through the eastern windows, set at a glazing angle. Built partially underground, the concrete northern wall held back the hillside soil. Windows and wood frames topped the 4-foot-tall concrete sections of the east, west, and south walls. This design, accompanied by the raised beds full of soil, added to the structure's heat retention quality. Without this, Eva's transplanted crops wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell. Inch-tall leafy stems protruded from the blocks of rich soil. Eva watered each crop manually, taking joy in the simple act of nurturing life. She was an Alaskan city girl who'd given up comfy urban living for her father-in-law's rustic, self-sustaining homestead. Her husband got access to his inheritance early and claimed ownership of the 12-acre plot of land, since they had the boys. 17 years later, they ran the place like a well-oiled machine. Holding the watering can in one hand, Eva climbed the ladder and reached the greenhouse's loft. She balanced on the wooden plank walkway that crisscrossed between blocks of plant-sprouting soil. When the weather got a little warmer, she'd be able to transfer these to the outside garden and start seeding the next batch. Finished, she descended and put freshly chopped blocks into the wood stove at the center of the room. She sealed the hatch, not having to worry about igniting the fire unless there were a few days of overcast weather. She stepped outside as the sunrise's brilliant rays spilled over the snow-capped Chukach Mountains. A few loose strands of her natural red hair swept against her freckled cheek. She tucked them under her self-knitted snowcap. Henry, Eva's father-in-law, stood by the cattle pen and spoke to his foreman, Gabriel, and 3 other farmhands. The 70-year-old man let the workers depart and met Eva as she walked by. Always wearing a friendly smile, Henry said, "It's looking like we'll be buying Eldrick's heifer." "Just in time for summer, too," Eva replied. "Uh-huh. Have you thought more about what I asked?" Henry asked. Eva scanned the rolling farmland, extending for acres around them. Occasional clusters of trees sprouted from the hard earth, but the sprawling fields were mostly open. A forest of trees grew a few hundred yards away. "If we want to corner the market, expansion is needed." "That's a yes, then?" Henry said. Eva nodded. "The boys won't be happy." "A little hard work won't hurt 'em," Henry replied. He had a clean-shaven face and a square jaw. Laugh lines bowed alongside his thin lips, and wrinkles raced across his forehead. His mop of curly hair curled outside of his well-worn cap. Being a widower for most of his days, he found his joy in his land and remaining family. Faith was a contributing factor, too. He claimed that only a godly man could tame this harsh soil. They followed the dirt trail through the property, discussing the summer crop and the less than 100 days they had to grow and harvest. Growing season was short in Alaska. Once winter hit, they'd only be as comfy as their storehouse. In the stable, Aiden brushed Eliana, the large, furry-hoofed Clydesdale. He whispered comforting things into the horse's ear before noticing Eva. "She's jealous, see?" Aiden said to the horse. Eva gave him a "really" look. A half-smile formed on Aiden's handsome face. He wore a tan Carhartt jacket, thick jeans, and his favorite pair of muddy cowboy boots. A cross necklace made from 2 nails hung around his wide neck. A farm boy through and through, Aiden had a bear-like physique and hearty work ethic. He was Eva's childhood sweetheart and faithful husband. Outside the stable, 15-year-old Tig, their youngest son, tended to the sheep while his older brother, Cayman, tilled the earth. Like most Bekhors, Cayman was a muscular fella and a man of the earth. He shot a bitter glance at his younger, more sensitive brother, who gently washed the sheep's fur. "Make sure you two are ready for school," Eva said. Cayman groaned. Henry split off from Eva. "Stay safe out there." "Thanks, Dad," she told her father-in-law. She dropped off her water bucket and went inside. She started the bath water and laid her police uniform on her bed. By the time she'd double-checked her uniform and belt, there was enough steaming water for her to wash up before work. She enjoyed her warm baths and found it hard to imagine life without them. Dressed in her uniform, bulletproof vest, and having her police-issue Smith & Wesson M&P 22 clipped to her belt, she said goodbye to her family and headed toward Anchorage. From the hilly fields, she could see the entirety of the city. It was built on a flat plain of land near the coast. Cargo freighters lingered at the dock. Planes soared out of the airport. Most goods in Alaska were flown or barged in. Steeply priced vegetables would take more than a week in transit and be past their prime by the time they arrived at stores. It was all the more reason for Eva to expand the family farm. Traffic cluttered her Friday morning commute. She arrived at the police department. The busy city street reflected off the window of the square, multi-story building. It looked like a glass house with a flat roof. Eva clocked in, grabbed her morning coffee, and headed into the briefing room for her daily assignment. Her superior divvied up the routes to each patrol cop. Eva was put on the city's outer limits. She grabbed another coffee, expecting a slow day. 38 minutes into her route, her dispatch radio crackled. "Requesting available units. There are multiple 1037s on 1601 Kingsway Drive." Eva grabbed her radio and responded to the call. Dispatch replied, "Thank you, officer. The suspicious persons in question were seen leaving around 4 this morning. They appeared to be a group of men, 8 in total, and 2 were armed." Eva checked the clock. 7:38 a.m. A little late, huh? She thought to herself. "How many are at the residence currently?" "Unknown, officer." "Armed?" "Unknown," dispatch replied. Eva's heart rate spiked. Having no idea what was in store was worse than a confirmed gunman. "Thank you, dispatch, 10-4. She put her radio mic back into its slot. If she had to guess, 82-year-old Carol Baker made the call. The senile busybody called in suspicious activity someplace different every other week. That or a group of good old boys were going out shooting and made some noise. A nagging feeling pulled at the back of Eva's thoughts. What if it was someone actually dangerous? Something years on the force could not prepare her for. She cracked her knuckles on the steering wheel and turned onto a dirt road. Her car rumbled as it climbed the hill. Gravel, bushes, and evergreen trees painted the earth on both sides of the street. Misty clouds capped distant mountain tops. The ocean was visible miles away. She passed by a few homes and reached the one in question. Window blinds closed as she parked. Eva's intense gaze scanned the area. A dinged-up truck was parked in the driveway. Eva watched for a moment before stepping outside. Tire marks dug deep into the gravel driveway. Multiple set of boot prints stamped the yard. Eva kept her hand close to her gun. Near the door, wind chimes clanged together. An empty bird feeder gently swayed. There was a strange stillness in the atmosphere, like the calm before the storm. A few birds took flight behind Eva, their wings flapping loudly. She pressed the doorbell. Its hollow ring seeped through the doorway. Heavy footsteps approached. Eva moved back half a foot. The door flung open fully. A 50-something-year-old man loomed over her. His rugged face and icy eyes locked onto her. The frilled sleeves from his long underwear peeked out from his faded camo jacket. Hardened droplets of paint had splattered on his cargo pants and the toes of his steel-toe boots. He waited for Eva to speak. "We received a complaint last night that there was suspicious activity at this property. Multiple men were here and a few of them were armed." The man's silent glare cut deep into Eva's soul. It made her feel small and weak. She continued speaking. "Are these claims accurate?" The man shook his head. "Then you don't mind if I take a look around?" Eva said. The man stepped aside, making way for Eva to enter. Cozy warmth radiated from the caged fireplace. Its orange glow flickered throughout the naturally lit room. Apart from a few dirty plates and empty coffee mugs, the house was fairly clean. Dozens of crinkled cigarette butts filled the lampstand ashtray next to the worn-out couch. The old stains marked the ugly carpeted floor. Deer trophies and photos of fish decorated the walls. One showed the man and woman holding hands from 20 years ago. They had blank expressions and stood outside of a ski lodge that had a sign written in Russian. The door quietly closed behind Eva. She twisted back quickly. The man blocked the exit, arms crossed. His eyes tracked her every move. Eva kept a cool exterior, but inside, fear gnawed at her heart. "How long have you lived here, Mr.
Zima, Misha, 33 years.
He had a deep voice and an American accent. Eva walked around the living room, seeing pictures of Misha and a little boy, probably his son. "Do you like Anchorage?" Misha stayed silent. Eva glanced over her shoulder and noticed another man had stepped in from the hallway. 20 years old, he had bony cheeks and a skinny ostrich neck. His big, beady eyes were silvery like his father. A few hairs grew on his chin and upper lip, but the boy was clearly a late bloomer. Despite neither of the men moving toward her, Eva felt claustrophobic. There was an exit out the back if things got hairy. "Take your hands out of your pockets," Eva told the boy. He did so. "What's your name?"
Joseph.
"Did anything happen last night, Joseph?" Eva said. "Have any visitors?" Joseph shook his head. He shot a quick glance Misha's way. Misha didn't take his eyes off Eva. "A group of men, 2 of them armed, were seen outside here last night. If you had a hunting party or a few beers, it's my job to know and make sure everyone is okay," Eva said.
"It was just the 2 of us,"
Misha said firmly. "Okay," Eva said under her breath. She spoke up. "Were either of you armed?" Joseph shot a quick glance at the tall cabinet and then down at his feet. Following a hunch, Eva walked to the cabinet. Misha's mouth tightened. Joseph took silent steps to Eva. She noticed from the corner of her eye and slipped her hand over a M&P's cold handle. Joseph froze. Eva pulled the knob on the cabinet and opened it quickly. A line of heavy-duty winter coats hung from the rack. They smelled of dust and mothballs.
Misha said, "There's nothing here for you. Leave now before I call my lawyer."
Disappointed with her find, Eva kept one hand on her holstered weapon and pushed aside the coat using the other. She caught sight of the long, upright gun barrel propped against the cabinet's back wall, just as Joseph's hand moved behind his back. Eva swiftly rotated her torso and pulled her pistol as the 20-year-old fumbled, pulling out his snub-nosed revolver. "Drop it!" Eva heard herself shout instinctively and aimed her weapon. "Now! Now!" Startled, Joseph tossed the revolver on the ground. "On the floor! Hands behind your head!" Eva commanded. Joseph got to his knees and lowered to the carpeted floor. Eva shouted at Misha, "You too!" Anger boiling up behind his red face, Misha went prone. He interlocked his fingers behind his head of ashen hair. Both men subdued. Eva commanded them not to move. She turned back to the cabinet. 2 military-grade machine guns stood upright behind the coats. They had laminated wood foregrips, stocks, and handles. Their drum magazines tilted at a 40-degree angle. She'd seen similar models in old action movies. RPK was the name, she believed but wasn't sure. They were without a doubt Russian and highly illegal, even in the gun-toting state of Alaska. Eva bounced her weapon's aim between the 2 men. "Misha and Joseph Zima, you are under arrest for possession of illegal firearms and aggravated assault against an officer of the law." She pulled out her cuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." She cuffed Misha as she continued reciting their Miranda rights, and then cuffed Joseph. "I'm sorry, Father," Joseph said. "Shut up," Misha said through his teeth. Eva radioed in the crime. She pulled Misha up from under the armpits and pointed him to the police cruiser. She got Joseph next, whose head was down in shame. Outside, Eva scanned the area. The street was silent. Her gut told her not to wait around. She opened her cruiser's back door. "In, both of you." Compliant, the 2 men ducked into the police car. She sealed them inside and radioed dispatch again. "I'm bringing them to the station now. Send someone to collect the weapons."
10-4, officer. Backup's on the way.
Eva put away her radio. Usually she'd wait at the property when suspects were apprehended. But there was an uneasiness in the air. The dopamine rush from the brief standoff gave her hyperperception. She sat in the driver's seat. Her captives glared at her through the separation cage. Joseph's eyes were bloodshot and glossy. Misha's were full of rage. She said, "You better tell me what the hell is going on before things get worse." Silence. "Your funeral." Eva started the car and headed down the rough dirt road. A few minutes later, her phone rang. She pulled it out of her pocket and glanced at the caller ID. Sighing, she answered. "Hey," she said, stress straining her voice. "Is now a bad time?" Aiden asked. Eva eyed her captives in the rear view. "Kind of, what's up?" "I can call you back, really, it's not a huge deal." Her husband backpedaled. "No, I'm listening." Eva held the phone between her shoulder and ear. "Are the boys at school?" "Yeah, I'm back at the farm." "Is everything okay?" "No," Aiden said seriously. Eva squeezed the steering wheel. More stress. Great. Aiden continued. "I forgot to tell you I love you this morning." "That's sweet, baby," Eva said half-heartedly. She expected something a little more urgent. "Don't you know what day it is?" Aiden asked. Eva turned down a rocky road and continued following it down the hill, gaining speed. Friday?" Trees blurred by. 18 years ago to this day, we were at Chena Hot Springs. The northern lights in the night sky were above us. You looked stunning, but I was so nervous to the point of shaking. As you were about to leave, I dropped on one knee, and I asked you if you wanted to be Mrs. Bekhor. "Oh, that. I think I remember," Eva teased. "Well, I just wanted to tell you that I've been thinking about you and got you something special tonight." "Ooh, can I have a hint?" Eva teased. "That would ruin the surprise, but I will tell you, it's..." Something flashed in the distant sky. Her car shut off. In a matter of seconds, she jerked the steering wheel to regain control. The cruiser ran off the road, hit the fallen tree, and flipped into the air. Chapter 3. Mist hovered off the snaking spring. Water spiders skated across the water's glassy surface. Birds sang in the tall evergreen trees, bordering the Alaskan paradise. Wearing waders and submerged up to his groin, Anton Volkov flickered his wrist. The fishing wire and the disguised hook landed gently on the clear waters. He tugged his fly fishing rod. Something bit. Feeling a rush, Anton let the trout run for a moment before pulling it in. As he battled for control, a faraway light flashed in the beautiful indigo sky. Anton's shoulders tensed. The trout broke the line and swam away. Anton lowered the rod. He walked through the water and climbed up the river's muddy bank. His boot scraped wet dirt off the bank's edge as he stepped onto the grass and dirt. Water dropped off him as he moved through the woods into his olive-green CUCV truck. Dirt clung to the off-road tires of the militarized 1984 Chevy Blazer look-alike. Its engine was much more powerful than a truck for that time. Also, it had been modified to survive an electromagnetic pulse. He stripped off his fishing boots, waders, and the rest of his clothes, all the way down to his plaid boxers. One on top of the other, the Russian words, "Fallen One," was carved into his muscular back. Other knife scars and old burns painted his tan flesh. He bundled his clothes and tossed them into the truck's bed. He grabbed his camo army fatigues from the front seat and changed into them. Tying his boots and tightening his belt, he climbed into his truck. Anton cranked his neck to the side, popping it. He shut his eyes and practiced his breathing exercises. Breathe in, breathe out. Repeat. His mind became calm like the sea. When he returned his eyes to the world, he felt serene. He drove through the woods, following a trail he'd cleared himself. Eventually, he reached a skinny dirt road. It ended at his cabin. Natasha leaned against the porch's support beam. Sunlight reflected off her eyebrow ring and lip stud. Like a lioness, she had an angular face and fierce beauty. Her bleached hair was cropped short. A brown leather bomber jacket covered her thin torso. Cargo pants covered her toned legs. High-laced boots extended up a third of her shins. "You're late," she said, venom in her voice. Never much of a talker, Anton walked by her and pushed open the door. The breeze blew loose straw across the wood floor as he stepped inside. Open weapon crates stacked on the 3 of the 4 walls. Grenades, ammo, and weapon attachments rested on the table. An RPG rested near a stubby barrel full of rocket-propelled grenades. 3 of Anton's comrades moved about inside and armed themselves. Levi, a hairy man boasting a large beard, picked up a light machine gun.
Why so grim, Anton? Today we become legends.
Nico chuckled.
To his 3, my brothers, may it never be the same.
He picked up an AK-47. He had thick glasses, tattoos, and could drink like a fish. As one of the reinforcements from the motherland, his past file was almost entirely redacted. Tashi, the other female member of their squad, was a female bodybuilder who had gained renown as a local celebrity and gymnast. She armed herself with an AK-47 as well.
You boys keep stroking your ego, but we all know the true heroes will arrive by boat. We're the appetizer for the main course. Forgettable. Disposable.
Levi said,
You sound frustrated, Tashi. Come to my bunk. I'll make you feel like a woman again.
You couldn't handle me, little boy, Tashi bragged. Nico said,
She makes a good point, Levi. Those thighs would crush your head. I know. I've seen her do it to a melon before,
Levi said, tastily eyeing Tashi's brutish body. Not getting involved in the conversation, Anton opened a crate and pulled out a T-5000 sniper rifle. He held the rubber pistol grip. Its foldable stock made it much easier to carry. The bolt-action rifle had a large multi-slotted muzzle brake and could shoot accurately up to 2,000 yards away. Anton loaded the 10-round magazine. He checked the DH-5 20x56 scope and adjusted the sight. He loaded a backpack full of extra ammo, binoculars, smoke grenades, and other items he might need in the battle. He took a pistol and a combat knife as well. Ready to go, he joined Natasha on the front porch. She sipped coffee from a thermos. She put her arm around Anton's side and rested her head against his shoulder. They looked out at the beautiful wilderness. "I'll never forgive you if you die today," Natasha said.
"That's out of my control," Anton said.
"Since when is anything out of your control?" The other three exited the cabin and loaded into the bed of the truck. Anton kissed Natasha, tasting the bitter black coffee on her lips. The way she looked at him stoked a fire in Anton. They walked to the truck. He drove. She sat in the front seat. Nico yelled from the bed, "No stops until we reach our first checkpoint."
"Understood,"
Anton replied. Seated across from Tashi, Levi chewed gum and gave her a provocative look. Disgusted, Tashi called him a dog in Russian. Natasha held Anton's hand as he drove. They headed to Anchorage. Chapter 4. Dangling upside down, blood spilled from Eva's busted nose, and crimson tears dried on her brow. Her face glowed cherry red. Her limp arms extended over her head and rested on the car's inner roofing. Her eyelids fluttered as the world returned to focus. Churned dirt and blades of grass squeezed through the cracks on the windshield. Eva's splitting headache blurred her vision. She blinked away tears, trying to recall where she was and how she got there. She glanced behind her. The back seats were empty. The right side window was shattered. Gritting her teeth, she rested her one hand on the ceiling and unbuckled the seat, using her other hand. She crashed into the roof faster than she expected. Curled in a strange position, she let the blood in her head settle back. She shut her eyes and wiped her nose and forehead before rubbing the blood on the ceiling fabric. Her phone rested nearby. She grabbed it and tapped the black screen. Nothing happened. "Oh, come on," she grumbled, and tried again, getting quickly frustrated. She removed the battery and put it back. Nothing. She maneuvered herself to reach the door's window switch. She clicked it a few times, but the window stayed up. Come to think of it, none of the electronics were functioning. She grabbed the radio mic. The sensitive components inside must have been fried. She let the mic dangle, rested on her back, and shoved the heel of her boots against the window. Again and again she kicked it. Pain thumped her ankles and legs every time she bashed the resilient glass. She was winded a few moments later and tried to think of another way out. Though cracked, more than half of the front windshield was against the ground. An idea came. She reached her hand up under the seat above her and snatched the bright orange emergency hammer. It was one of those tools she bought years ago and never used. One solid whack against the window and most of the glass shattered. Success. She pushed out the rest of the shards and climbed onto the grassy earth. Head hurting, she stood to her feet and wobbled. She rested her hand on a nearby tree to keep balance. Birds cawed out of sight. The sun was at a higher place than before. How long was I out? She tried the radio on her belt, hoping it would work. That was fried too. The flash in the sky must have taken down the grid. She guessed it was either a nuke or an EMP bomb. If the former, radiation might have already killed her. Eva laughed. The historical reaction was brief and unexpected. It beat weeping in terror. She had to trust God to get through this one. The two of them were on pretty good terms. She hoped. The rural landscape extended all around her. Fears about her children, farm, husband, animals, crops, job, city, friends, church, parents, and a rise of panic that would follow this disaster popped into her mind, and it stopped her strange laughter. "Not good," she mumbled. She thought back to her husband's advice every time life got overwhelming. One step at a time. Misha and Joseph's escape was the biggest pressing concern. Despite the outage, she was still on duty. Her family of officers in the city of Anchorage needed her to keep the peace. Eva's mind went blank, trying to remember police protocol for this type of scenario. She focused on what she could control, apprehending her suspects. She limped down the road, following the path she took over here. Her busted nose swelled. Air couldn't escape her crusty red nostrils. She breathed out her mouth. Her face tingled. And as she hiked the inclined road, she noticed a figure slouched against a parked pickup truck. She approached the man. He was elderly and clenching his chest with his hand. He lifted his weary eyes to Eva like a serf in need of water. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Are you injured?" Eva inquired. He held his chest. "Pacemaker." "Remain calm. We're going to find a way to get you help," Eva replied, attempting to keep a smile. The man shut his eyes. He lowered his head. "Sir?" Eva put her hand on his shoulders. "Sir." She checked his pulse as the hand over his heart limply fell to his lap. Eva pressed her 2 fingers against his neck. Nothing. Heart racing, Eva pulled the man to his back and started chest compressions. Much like trying to kick in the police cruiser's window, she fought hard, but it was fruitless. 2 minutes later, Eva stopped all compressions. She rubbed the sweat from her brow, calming herself. She tried again. No breakthrough. Hopeless, she sat next to the unknown old man. Failure crushed her as she looked at his slack jaw and closed eyes. No ambulance was coming. No help of any kind. This type of thing must have been happening all over the city, maybe over the entire state, or nation. Sniffling, Eva grabbed a blanket from the man's truck and covered him. She left him and marched to Misha's neighborhood. Her suspects had left the man to die. Eva balled her fists. Anger stewed inside her. The neighboring homes lined the sides of the inclining road. Window blinds rustled as Eva walked down the center of the dirt street. She scanned the area. Her hand stayed close to her weapon. The front door of a nearby house opened and a man rushed out. "Hey! Hey!" Eva turned to him. "Sir, I don't have time for this." The man ignored her as he hurried across his lawn. He pointed back at the house. "Nothing in my house is working. Are the power lines down?" Eva kept walking away. The man followed. "Are you listening to me? I was on a very important business call when my phone stopped. The Wi-Fi is not working either, and I'm pushing a deadline." Eva twisted back to him. Her sudden movement caused the man to stop in his tracks. Eva said, "Sir, please return to your home." "Officer!" a woman yelled. She stood on her porch. "I saw a flash in the distance. What's going on?" "Ma'am, please go inside." "A flash?" the man exclaimed. "What flash?" More doors opened, and other locals flooded outside. "Why aren't the police here?" "My car won't start." "Is my sister okay? She's at the hospital." 100 questions bombarded Eva. She stood at the center of the masses. Misha's house wasn't far, but she'd been unable to reach him. Every step she took, someone blocked her. Her orders for them to move were flushed out by their complaints and questions. Eva stopped. "Enough!" Her voice echoed through the valley. The street fell silent. "Listen up," Eva yelled at the crowd of 20-plus people. "I hear everything you're saying, but I know about as much as you. If there's been an attack, terrorist, domestic, or otherwise, the best thing you can do is work together and prepare for the worst." Dreadful moans sounded throughout the crowd. "What about our families in Anchorage?" one woman shouted. "Yeah, my son is at school. How can I get him?" The crowd started to get riled up. "Everyone," Eva shouted to calm them down. "Look at the person next to you. See them? Good. They're your new best friend. The police, hospital workers, and government agencies are probably overburdened by the number of help requests. If you're not seriously injured and your life isn't in danger, start coordinating with your neighbors about getting what you need. Most likely, your loved ones are worried about you and looking for ways to get back home. Prepare to be without power for an extended period of time. Fill up your bathtubs and sinks, ration food, and pray to God to get us out of this mess." Eva shouldered her way through the crowd. It wasn't flattering news she shared, but it was a sane call to action. While the disgruntled people dispersed to their homes, Eva arrived outside of Misha's house. The front door was partly ajar. Drawing out her gun, she moved inside slowly. No sign of her suspects. Staying alert to her surroundings, she pulled open the wardrobe door. The coats were parted, and the machine guns were gone. Eva moved through the house and eventually out the back door. She discovered an axe jammed into a stump. The sunlight reflected off a metal chain link from her handcuffs. Eva headed back to the road and waved down the woman heading to the neighboring home. The woman was younger than Eva, in her mid-30s. Her scrunched brown hair flowed down her slumped shoulders. Downcast eyes added to the sorrow of her makeupless face. She wore a sweater that conformed to the shape of her little belly and saggy chest. "Officer," she said, her voice soft and weak. "Call me Eva." The woman pursed her lips, keeping one arm crossed under her chest. She extended the other to shake Eva's hand. "Marilyn." "Did you know Misha that lived next door?" "The man?" Marilyn shook her head. "I didn't know him, but I saw him around." "How about this morning?" Marilyn said. "Come to think of it, I thought I saw him and a young man running through the backyard. The other one moved, strangely, like with his hands behind the back." "And the older one?" "He was squeezing his thumb tightly. I think he heard it." "He must have dislocated his thumb to escape the cuffs," Eva theorized. "They left about an hour before you showed up and were carrying something. I think it was guns, but I was watching from my bed, so I didn't get a good look," Marilyn replied. "In what way did they go?" Eva asked. "Towards the city," Marilyn replied. Eva knew where her next stop was. She thanked the woman and started walking away. "Eva," Marilyn called. "Yes." "My husband and children are in Anchorage. Do you think they're okay?" "I hope so," Eva replied. "I won't be able to look for them." "I understand. You have bigger responsibilities," Marilyn said, though she obviously wanted help. Eva said, "Sorry." "What if we come with you?" a man asked. It was the same businessman that was the first to complain to her. His expensive peacoat and slacks were offset by his clean running shoes. The breeze rustled his curly brown hair. "I'm Matt, by the way." "Officer Bekhor," Eva replied. "I need you two to understand something. I'm not going to Anchorage for a social visit. 2 of my suspects got away when my car crashed. They're armed and dangerous." "We won't get in your way," said Matt. Marilyn's eyes watered. "I just want to make sure my boys are okay." Matt nodded. "Also, my business partner was drinking late last night and never came home. I want to check on him," Matt explained. "The best place for you to be is at home," Eva said. Matt said, "I have nothing here. It's a darn Airbnb I rented for a business trip. There's not a single canned soup in the whole building. I'd have much better luck in the city." "It'll be dangerous," Eva warned.
So what? If this event is as serious as you say, this may be the only day when money is still worth something. I have to strike while the iron is hot.
Officer, please, Marilyn pleaded.
This isn't a good idea, Eva replied. Chapter 5. Good idea or no, Matt and Marilyn followed Eva down the dirt road. She told them to stay alert of their surroundings and keep their mouths shut. Matt had a much harder time with the second request than Marilyn. He complained about the walk and about how the damaged power grid had cost him his job. He wondered out loud if his electronic assets were still secure and regretted not liquidating more cash. Marilyn gasped at the sight of the covered body. Heart attack, Eva explained, and walked on. Matt said, "One less person to look after, I guess." Marilyn glared at him. "What? I'm just trying to look at the bright side," Matt replied. They walked by the cop car. "You survived that?" Matt exclaimed. "You must be Superwoman or something." Her throbbing head and stuffy nose were clear reminders she wasn't. 15 minutes later, Eva rounded a corner of the road and noticed Fire Station 10 up ahead. Eva quickened her pace. Help, she thought joyfully. The firemen were the right kind of selfless people to help the locals. One quick talk to the fire chief, and they could divvy up the work. They might even have a functional radio or parts to repair her own. A lump rested on the station's driveway. It was a body. Eva slowed, still 150 yards from the station. She reared her head back at the others. "Off the road, now." Confused and terrified, Marilyn and Matt ran into the grass and behind the trees. Eva drew out her gun and dashed after them. "Stay behind me and stay low," she commanded. She eyed Matt. Not a sound. He nodded soberly. Crouching, Eva made from tree to tree, always aware of the fire station. She noticed a small window on the second floor. It was cracked open. The lack of internal lighting prevented her from seeing inside. She dropped prone and ordered the others to do so also. Snaking across the grass on their elbows and bellies, they eyed the silent station. The dead body out front leaked blood down the sloping road. Through the large open door, more bodies could be seen scattered around the fire truck. "There," Marilyn whispered and pointed at the window. The tip of the gun barrel poked out of the darkness. "Don't move," Eva whispered. Shrouded in shadow, the gunman placed the RPK's bipod on the windowsill. The barrel swept across the tree line. Marilyn covered her mouth using both hands. Matt closed his eyes. Eva aimed her pistol at the window. She was a good shot, but it would be difficult to hit the target from this distance. Her aim swayed slightly no matter how much she wanted to stay still. Unlike the movies, holding a weapon still was extremely difficult, especially under stressful situations. Her best bet was to fire multiple rounds, expecting one to hit. If she failed, the machine would saw her in half. 5 long minutes drifted by. Chigger bugs agitated Eva's skin. Marilyn mouthed silent prayers. Matt rubbed away the perspiration stinging his eyes. Eva gestured them to follow her. She army-crawled on her belly, fully aware of the constant danger. They moved at a 45-degree angle away from the station, and by the time it was behind them, they had another 24 yards between them and the building. They rose to their grass-stained knees and dirty palms and hurried further away. When Eva thought it was safe, she gestured for the others to stand. They took cover behind the trees. "Holy heck, that was close," Matt said, brushing the dirt off himself. "Screw those guys." Marilyn crossed her arms and nervously chewed the inside of her cheek. "How are we going to get back home?" Matt replied, "Not this way." He started walking ahead. Marilyn lagged behind. A moment passed before they noticed Eva wasn't behind them.
She was covered behind a tree and watched the fire station. "Eva," Marilyn said in a loud whisper. "Hurry!" Eva put her back against the tree. "Go on ahead, I'll catch up." "But that's an order," Eva replied. Marilyn's eyes watered. "Let her stay," Matt said. "We'll do fine on our own." Hesitant, Marilyn jogged after Matt. She turned her head back to Eva a few times, but her legs continued taking her forward. Eva steadied her breathing. She hated the idea of storming the fire station, but as long as her suspects had guns, no one on this road was safe. Thoughts of her own children popped into her mind. They needed her. The farm needed her. These men weren't her problem. It was one of those days where she wished she wasn't a cop. Running would be so much easier. Nevertheless, it was days like these that cities needed cops. She could do this, despite her heart and mind telling her to run. Partly crouched, she weaved between the trees and waited for the time when the machine gun barrel was pointed away from her to across the street. The moment she reached the other side, she dropped to her belly and moved behind a rotting log, just as the barrel turned her way. Bugs and beetles crawled across the broken bark. Eva reminded herself that she shoveled horse crap as she scooted flush against the log. The insects crawling up her uniform grossed her out, despite her knowing it was the least of her problems. She carefully reached the end of the log and peeked over the jagged edge. The gunman was watching from the window. She quickly ducked behind cover. Fears flooded her mind. "He saw me," she said to herself. The weapon trembled in her hand. The gunfire she expected to rain down didn't come. Mustering courage, she peeked around the edge of the log again. The gun barrel was completely gone from the window. Eva felt relief, and then dread. Where had the shooter gone? Was he coming her way? She crawled out from behind the log and sprinted across the field behind the station. She dropped behind a dip in the inclining knoll. She aimed her weapon at the station. Her busted nose started bleeding again for no reason. She was too focused to brush the tear of blood running over her parted lips and hanging at the tip of her chin. The coast seemingly clear, she sprinted to the side of the building, her body snugly pressed against the rough brick walls. Gun lowered but ready to raise, she neared the back corner of the building. Peeking her head just around the edge, she saw a closed back door and an emergency ladder to the roof. It was 8 feet off the ground, though. She might be able to use it to access the second floor. Breathing out of the corner of her mouth, she made the conscious decision to move to the ladder. Thankfully, there were no windows at the back of the station's first floor. She holstered her weapon, but left the button undone for an easy, quick draw. She climbed onto the nearby dumpster and jumped the ladder. Her calloused hands grabbed the bottom rung. Suspended a few feet off the ground, she pulled herself up 1 rung at a time. The pull-ups strained her upper back muscles, but she easily prevailed. Passing by the second floor, a nearly open window captured her eye. She checked the roof first, just to be sure there was no way down from up there. There was nothing up there that could help her. She reached over the windowsill and took hold of it using her fingertips. Hanging by her fingers, she pulled herself through the window and into the second-floor conference room. She drew out her weapon and walked to the doorway. She opened it, seeing 20-something-year-old Joseph in a lounge area and aiming his RPK out of the window. Eva moved like water, soundless and smooth as she neared him. About 10 feet away, she said quickly, "Move and I shoot." Joseph's first reaction was to turn back to her. The color left his face. Eva quickly commanded him to shut up and get on the ground. Leaving the large machine gun propped against the wall, Joseph lowered himself. Eva noticed the broken chain between his cuffs. "Where's your father?" Eva asked in a harsh whisper. Head down, Joseph stayed silent. You better start talking, or I'm going to make life very hard for you, Eva warned. Joseph mumbled something. Eva tilted her ear to him slightly. What? Joseph glanced up at her. What can you do? His words were an arrow through Eva's heart. She didn't have handcuffs or an effective way to bring him to the police station miles away. She could take his weapon, but what would stop him from getting more? He was right. She couldn't do anything. Her gun stayed trained on him. What were you using the weapons for? To maintain the peace, Joseph replied. Bang-up job on those firefighters, really considered peaceful options. There was venom in Eva's tone. They were a necessary sacrifice, Joseph answered. You knew about the bomb, Eva said flatly. Joseph lowered his head back to the floor. Who are you working for? How many are you? Eva asked heatedly, feeling her blood pressure rising. Footsteps sounded from the stairwell. Someone was coming. Eva quickly moved to the wall and kept her iron sights trained on Joseph. Misha appeared at the top of the stairs. A cloth was wrapped around his left hand where he dislocated his thumb. The handcuff still dangled from his right wrist. His face was surprised to see Eva. He raised his large machine gun. Pop, 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 pop. 4 bullets drilled holes through his midsection shortly before he tumbled backwards down the stairs. Eva heard Joseph scurrying on the floor. She twisted around, seeing him reaching for his weapon. No time to hesitate. Eva shot him twice. The young man recoiled into the wall and slid down, leaving 2 smears of blood on the white paint. Ba-dum, ba-dum. Eva's heart raced. The 20-year-old rested on his side. His eyes were partially open. Eva's second shot pierced his vital organs, but it was the shock that killed him quickly. The firefight was over before it started. Her finger was slightly strained from the quick trigger pulls. She walked to the stairs and saw Misha crumpled at the bottom. His body was twisted in an unnatural way. A tear of blood trickled down the corner of his agape mouth. Disgusted, Eva backed away. She'd killed once before in a drug bust. It was similar. A man had pulled his gun on her. She and 3 other cops were quick to gun him down. She had the same sickening feeling then, too. Weeks of sleep were ruined by the event. What helped her get through was knowing that it wasn't just her hands that were stained in blood. This time, she was fully accountable. Of course it was self-defense, but 2 human beings were dead. These were people with loved ones, hopes, and ambitions. As easy as it was for movie action heroes to disregard that fact, the reality was far less forgiving, even if the people she killed were going to kill her. She remembered hearing stories of war vets. One soldier shot a man in the head who was trying to kill him and suffered from major PTSD. His rational mind told him that it was for a greater cause, but his emotions were a different story. An engine rumbled outside. Confused, Eva jogged to the window. She stood by Joseph's body and peeked outside. A 1970s Ford pickup raced down the street. A group of men sat in the truck's bed. They held military assault rifles and wore Kevlar vests. The truck pulled up to a stop outside of the fire department. Eva grabbed the machine gun. It was 10 pounds and 41 inches long. The 70-round drum magazine added more weight to the heavy weapon. It was a weapon made for a big man, not someone like Eva. The bipod wobbled every time she moved. 3 seconds after lifting the gun, she realized how stupid it would be to open fire on the truck. The men unloaded from the truck's bed and walked to the station. "Misha!" one yelled. Toting the heavy weapon, Eva dashed to the window where she had climbed in. She put the gun on safety and dropped it to the grass below. She climbed out and reached for the ladder. She was barely able to grab hold of the nearest vertical bar. She swung herself to catch the rung, but slipped and fell backward. She stifled her scream and hit hard against the earth. The impact knocked the wind out of her. She had landed flat on her back, so the pain radiated from her shoulders to her hips. The gunmen were in the station. It wouldn't be long before they found Misha's body. Wincing, Eva sat up. Feeling too weak to take the RPK, she drew out her pistol and limped around to the corner of the building. She moved along the wall carefully, but was slowed by pain. She peered at the truck. There was one man in the driver's seat. The rest must have been inside. She didn't have long before they found the body. Hunching, Eva grimaced. She knew she only had a few rounds left in her pistol's magazine. Working through the pain, she rushed behind the truck, taking cover behind its back bumper and quickly moving around to the back door. Through the open fire station door, the gunmen gestured to one another, stepping over Misha's body, and cautiously headed upstairs. Eva appeared next to the driver's window. She aimed the gun a few feet from his head and cleared her throat. The middle-aged man turned to her, nearly crapping himself. He raised his hand slightly. She gestured with her head, telling him to get out. He did so quietly. Eva backed up so he couldn't make a grab for her gun. The moment he was on his knees and had his fingers interlocked behind his head, Eva kicked the space between his upper back plates, knocking him on his face, while she scurried into the truck. She slammed the door, put the truck into reverse, and stepped on the gas. 2 gunmen on the station's first floor shouted at her. She whipped the steering wheel, turning the truck 180 degrees. Her smooth, once-in-a-lifetime maneuver was followed by a barrage of bullets. She ducked her head as bullets ripped off chunks of her seat and left holes in the windshield. Every stray shot reminded her of her frail mortality. She white-knuckled the steering wheel and stomped the gas pedal to the floor. She peeked her head just enough over the dash to steer. She rounded the first curve in the road and escaped the onslaught. She blew loose hair out of her face and drove quickly down the country road. Her engine made a strange noise. White smoke wisped from her hood and curled up her cracked windshield. "You've got to be kidding me," she shouted. She doubted the truck would last long. She had to get to Anchorage at least. Her body was too beat up for a long hike. She drove through neighborhoods, seeing 2 men tinkering with their disabled car. A small group of people gathered outside of one house and discussed community organizing. Alaska had its fair share of preppers. Everyone with half a brain had food stored for the intense winters. Eva knew these people weren't completely doomed. She followed the 2-lane roads through the rural landscape. Mountains stood mighty in the distance. The majority of the street was silent. No cars or bystanders. It wasn't until she arrived at the city outskirts when she encountered her first pileup. Vehicles of all shapes and sizes smushed into each other like tin cans. The father from a family of 4 carried his preteen son's limp body toward the city. The mother held the hand of her young daughter. They both looked dazed from the car crash. Eva drove on the grass and contemplated passing by them, but her heart got the better of her. Protect and serve, she reminded herself, and slowed to a stop beside him. She kept the truck running, afraid the engine would die if she had to restart it. Lips pursed, she rolled down the window and faced the distraught father. He was in his 30s, slightly overweight, and had an Ivy League haircut. Soft-spoken, the man said, "My son." His voice trailed as his eyes found the bullet holes, one being on the driver's seat's headrest. "Get in back," Eva said, quickly. No time to ask questions. The man hurried the boy to the bed of the truck. His wife opened the bullet-riddled tailgate. They loaded the kids first. The mother went in next, and then the father. The glass from the window behind Eva shattered across the floor of the truck. "You're a legit cop, right?" the husband asked. "Alan!" the wife called him out. "Just asking," the man mumbled. "How is the boy?" Eva asked. the husband said. He hit his head during the accident and has not woken up since. He's breathing, thank God. The wife held Alan's hand. She introduced herself as Sarah, her daughter as Jenna, and the boy was Ian. Where is everyone from the crash? Eva asked as they drove by the pile-up. Most went back home to get guns. One claimed this was the start of World War III, Alan explained, holding his boy. An uncommon fear fell over Eva. I sure hope not. The man nodded soberly. He said the bomb was just the first wave. Wave 2 is a full-scale invasion. Expect ships at the port. Eva said, the government would have warned us if they saw warships en route. Maybe they did, but comms were blocked. Canada could be involved too. Eva chuckled at his last comment. She said, I don't see that happening. If Russia wanted to invade, they would be going against the Canadians too. We'll see, Alan replied, holding on to his convictions. Jenna started crying. Sarah hugged her. It's okay, we're almost at the hospital. Are we gonna die? The little girl asked. No, sweetheart. Sarah comforted her before sending a dagger-eyed glare at her husband. What? He asked obliviously. Sarah rolled her eyes and continued comforting her distraught daughter. Alaska Regional Hospital was deep in the heart of the city, but close to the police station. I'm surprised your kids aren't in school, Eva said. Alan said, we homeschool. Government-funded organizations are sucky, no offense. Talking seemed to take the father's mind off his injured son. He asked, So, what happened to your truck? Eva was silent. Her fingers were still locked on the steering wheel. Like pop-up windows, worries clouded her mind. What if there were brigands like Misha and Joseph all around Anchorage? Chapter 6. Anton Volkov pulled to a stop, half a block from Anchorage High School. Nico, the Russian-born, was first out of the truck. Muscular Tashi and bearded machine gunner Levi followed. Natasha held Anton's hand as they eyed the school. She said, You're not allowed to be afraid. Everyone is scared. That's part of the game. Anton grabbed his sniper rifle and stepped out of the truck. Disappointed in her lover's response, Natasha exited. Some of the students and faculty were clustered outside of the front doors. They pointed to the crashed cars on the road and the pedestrians bickering. Anton's squad of 5 moved across the street. One of the students shouted, Hey, it's an army! The army is here! He tugged his friend's sleeve. Nico took point. Inside, inside! Confused, the students and faculty froze. What the hell is going on here? One of the faculty members stepped forward and was riddled with bullets. Inside, Nico shouted, guns smoking. The students that obeyed were spared, and the ones that ran were quickly dropped. Levi used his machine gun to scatter the onlookers. Anton hadn't pulled his trigger, but the rest of his crew had condemned themselves to hell. They pushed inside and commanded the fleeing students to go to the gym. The squad split up and kicked in various classroom doors. Their demands were simple and direct. Shut up, get to the gym, or die. The students obeyed. Anton followed behind large groups as they flooded the basketball court. Once they were under Levi's watchful eye and the barrel of his RPK machine gun, Anton and Natasha used nylon rope to secure every exit but the front. Nico and Tashi gathered students and brought them inside. Those on the gym floor were commanded to sit down and shut up. The ones that were crying were dragged up in the front of Nico, who stood on the stage. Levi, Natasha, and Anton eyed the crowd. Let me be very clear, Nico said, aiming the gun at 6 crying sophomores. If any of you try to leave or talk, they go bye-bye. You don't want that, no? The gym went silent as death. Tashi went to the hallway to gather more stragglers. Nico grinned.
Smart kids. Which one of you is Victoria Blanchard? Not all at once.
No reply.
Okay,
Nico said angrily. He aimed the gun at one of the crying girls.
Tell Victoria to come out. Go on. You're allowed to talk.
Victoria, please. On her knees, the girl squeezed her hands together and cried, Please, Victoria. Anton's stomach churned at the sound of her gut-wrenching cries. Nico seemed apathetic.
Not good enough.
He aimed at the beggar. Wait! A girl shouted. A blonde senior stood up from the midst of the students. Her hands were over her head, tears on her cheeks. I'm right here. Levi kept his large machine gun aimed at the crowd.
Come here,
Nico commanded.
Show me your ID.
The girl drew out her wallet from her purse as she stepped by and over her classmates. She hiked up the stage's stairs. Trembling, she lifted up her driver's license. It was legit.
Thank you for your cooperation. Have a seat nearby me,
Nico said politely.
Anton.
Using zip ties, Anton bound Victoria's wrists. Don't do this, she whispered. My dad, he'll pay, I promise. Natasha knelt down next to her.
We know.
Nico unfolded a list from his pocket. He proceeded to read out more names. As the students stepped up, one at a time, Nico turned to Anton and Natasha.
You may proceed to the roof now. Understood,
Anton replied. Natasha and Anton jogged by the crowd of students and out of the gym. They followed the quiet corridors.
That went better than expected,
Natasha remarked.
Only a few casualties.
Anton walked at a brisk pace. They reached the first exit door and sealed it. They proceeded to the next and sealed that too. On the third one, they stepped outside and followed the back wall of the building to the ladder. Natasha climbed first. Anton kept watch. When they reached the rooftop, Natasha opened her backpack and set up a claymore. Anton proceeded to the far lip of the building. He dropped to his belly and scanned the surrounding city. Natasha joined him.
You are cold today,
Natasha said.
No room for mistakes,
Anton said.
That's not it. I saw you. You never pulled the trigger,
Natasha said.
I'm not equipped with the weapon for that part of the job,
Anton replied.
You have a pistol,
Natasha said flatly. Anton set his jaw. He aimed down his rifle scope.
You know the job,
Natasha said.
I do.
Play your part then, Natasha said, and pointed to a male student fleeing from the school. Breathing calmly, Anton tracked him through the scope.
Take the shot, Anton,
Natasha said in his ear. Anton's finger hovered over the trigger. The crosshairs aimed center mass. The boy must have been 15, 16 at the most. His whole life was ahead of him.
Anton,
Natasha ordered. The student dashed between a few crashed cars and behind a building. Natasha said,
Coward.
Anton lifted his head from the scope.
One boy won't change anything.
Natasha eyed him with total disdain. Silent, she took her weapon and walked to the other side of the roof. Anton kept watch at his post, ready to kill any real threat that approached.